Hey fourth graders, happy Wednesday. I just want to show you a little bit about what I expect from your reading responses this week. I know some of you are typing and some of you are handwriting. Either way, it is important that you answer the question fully. So I've already gone on my virtual field trip and I wrote down some observations about Yellowstone National Park. And then I also wrote down 5 things that I thought were really interesting as I was reading, which is what I asked you to do today when you're reading about the Grand Canyon. But your exit ticket today is this. What surprised you most when you were reading today? Explain why. If you're having trouble answering this question, go back to the 5 things that you found interesting because that'll give you a really good starting point. And I think what I'm going to focus on is the fact that this national park sits on top of the largest active volcano on Earth. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that question right here and I'm going to restate the question in my first sentence, remembering to indent my first sentence. What surprised you most when you were reading today? Explain why. Something that surprised me most when, capital I, because remember it's a proper noun, when I was reading today was that I'm going to write Yellowstone National Park because I'm going to treat the reader like they're stupid and they have no idea what I'm talking about, remembering to capitalize Yellowstone National Park because it is a proper noun. Was that Yellowstone, and you remember, if you don't remember how to spell the word, look for it in the text, National Park sits on top of an active volcano. Now I've restated the question and put it into a complete sentence answering the question, but you know what, fourth graders, I'm not done answering the question because I didn't explain why this surprised me. Well, one of the first things I thought was, how is it safe to go to a park that's sitting on a volcano? What happens if it erupts? So that's what I'm going to write about right now. This surprised me because it doesn't seem safe to have a park on top of an active volcano. Period, because I've gotten to the end of my sentence, because I'm going to explain, well, why isn't it safe to be on top of an active volcano? I wonder what would happen if the volcano erupted. And that's a question, so I'm going to put a question mark at the end of it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reread what I wrote to make sure that I've answered the question and it sounds right. Something that surprised me most when I was reading today was that Yellowstone National Park sits on top of an active volcano. This surprised me because it doesn't seem safe to have a park on top of an active volcano. I wonder what would happen if the volcano erupted. I was also surprised by this, fourth graders, because when I think of a volcano, I think of something like this, which is normally what you see, and the lava comes out and it goes everywhere. But when I was reading, it did tell me that it's like 15 miles of boardwalk. I don't know if 15 miles can think of that. So I'm wondering, what does this volcano look like? Is it more of a flat volcano? So I'm going to finish up my paragraph here with that question, that reason why it surprised me. I was also surprised. Man, I'm going to get very good at spelling that word, surprised. I was also surprised because when I think of a volcano, I picture it being very tall. How do they fit a park at the top of a volcano? So as I'm talking about what surprised me today, fourth graders, I want you to notice a couple of things. I want you to notice that in the very beginning, I restated my question and I turned it into a sentence to let the reader know what I'm talking about. I also explained why. It's part of that first cite, then explain mentality. First, I'm going to tell you what the text says. The text says Yellowstone National Park sits on top of an active volcano. But then I'm going to explain. This surprised me because this is my explain portion. I'm explaining why it surprised me. And normally when something surprises you, fourth graders, you have a question about it. Well, you know, how did that happen? Or, oh, how did you guys do this? Or, you know, so when you're surprised at something, sometimes you might have questions. So it's okay to write a question as to why it surprised you. Well, I was surprised because what would happen if the volcano erupts? And also, how do they fit a park at the top of a volcano? Those are absolutely acceptable things to include. Just make sure that if you're asking a question in your writing, fourth graders, you're using the correct punctuation, which is a question mark. I also am going to encourage you to reread what you wrote, check for capital letters in the beginning of your sentences, punctuation, and make sure it sounds right. All right, fourth graders, looking forward to hearing and reading about what surprised you most when you were reading today about the Grand Canyon. Make sure you explain why. Bye, fourth graders.